Okay. So hi, everybody. Thank you for coming to Defend 3.0. This is our second to last session. We appreciate all the time that people have given to our Defend series. And I think after today or by Monday, we'll have the final Defend survey posted. So we'll appreciate if you fill that out. Today's topic is summer fun, maintaining healthy behaviors when our schedules change. But before we get started, and Dr. Howley and I will both be presenting, next week is your last chance. Attend those personalized coaching sessions for behavior change on Monday, nutrition on Tuesdays, and physical activity and exercise on Thursdays. It's your last week. Any summer questions that you may have, it's the perfect chance to ask our experts. Our final challenge for Defend 3 is try to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep each day and then comment on our Facebook challenge post on how well it goes. And so you'll notice that also our cooking demo this week will be about foods for sleep, and our physical activity demo will be about safe exercises to do when it's hot outside. Oops, I didn't mean to click on YouTube. So summer fun, maintaining healthy behaviors when schedules change. So I'm sure especially those of you living like in middle or southern Arkansas are feeling the effects of summertime. It's really hot and humid up here in Northwest Arkansas, but that means more outdoor time, more barbecues, more picnics, more fun activities. So how can we stay healthy? Oops. So one thing I actually learned in doing research for this presentation is that actually where I thought we ate out more around the holidays, we actually eat out more and attend more celebrations and events in the summertime, with most people eating out or going to an event at least once per week. And well, at least pre-COVID, and I'm sure it's picking up now as more and more people get vaccinated. And that actually people, especially lower income or kids living in the city, they tend to gain more weight in the summertime than they do during the school year. So today, Dr. Howie Hickey and I want to just share some tips for staying healthy when it comes to nutrition and exercise. So when we think about nutrition, keep portion control in mind. So I know we've talked about this on and off through the entire Defend 1, 2, and 3 series, which I guess it's almost been a year that this has been taking place. Make a healthy plate. So I put an image of my plate on the right. So ensuring that half your plate are fruits and vegetables, a quarter grains, and half of those at least being whole grains, and a quarter of your plate lean protein. Don't forget to hydrate and drink water. Read your food labels. A lot of picnic and barbecue or potluck type foods can be like heavy in mayonnaise and other higher fat options. Dine and shop smart, skip the salt and cut the fat. So a lot of chips and other snack foods that we eat in the summer are really high in fat and salt. Be cautious of fad diets to get that bikini ready or summer ready beach body. Choose smart snacks. And like I said, stay hydrated. So Dr. McDermott, and I know Dr. Howie Hickey refers to this later in her part of the presentation, gave a wonderful presentation. I can't remember if it was in Defend 3 or earlier in Defend 2 about hydration. So especially in the summer when it's hot outside, we want to drink a lot of water and plenty of it. And we need to pay attention to what the signs of dehydration are. So sometimes it can be shown in your skin. Maybe it's dry, irritated, inflamed, or really itchy. You may be getting headaches or feeling dizziness and fatigue, especially, if you've been outside for an extended period of time. Check your urine. That's a great sign of hydration status. So if you're hydrated, you want your urine to be like the color of straw, and darker urine is a sign that you need to drink more water. Avoid alcohol, sugary drinks, and caffeine. When you're out in the heat, those can lead to dehydration. Keep cool. Eat foods with high water content. And I think the next slide has an example of some of these foods. And make sure you're replenishing the water you lose from sweat. And this link that I provided with the source of information, has a great guideline on how much you should drink and when, especially when you're sweaty. So consuming foods with high water content is important. I mean, always, but especially in the summer. And really what you'll find is that it's fruits and vegetables. They have really high water content. So continue to think about eating the rainbow and all colors of food. So foods like cucumber, celery, iceberg lettuce, zucchini, watermelon and strawberries are both 91% water. Cauliflower, radishes, carrots. So basically most fruits and vegetables, which have a lot of nutrients, not a lot of calories, and a high water content. And then I think I see something in the, oops, sorry guys. Let me check the chat. See if there's a question related to thoughts about purified water versus water from the faucet. Personally, I think, if you're on city water, your water from the faucet should be pretty safe. And, I think we're lucky because we have fluorinated water in the US. So that's also coming from your tap. I mean, purified water, like, what is it? Brands like Aquafina or like, Sam's has their own brand, Nestle. They're just basically like purified tap water. So I think like tap water that's been run through some sort of industrial, like Brita type thing. So I personally think if you're on city water, it should be relatively safe in Arkansas. I think where you need to be concerned is if you're on other sources of water. And I bring a water bottle now everywhere. That's a habit I've adopted over the years, like a home water bottle, just to spare the earth from more plastic. So another thing to stay concerned about, especially with this increase in picnics or barbecues, potlucks, is preventing foodborne illness. And I know last summer, so I think within the Defend One series, we had a lot of information posted on foodborne illness and staying safe during summer and cooking your food. And also, I think there's a lot of fact sheets through Extension and as well as USDA and CDC on preventing foodborne illness at barbecues and potlucks and picnics. So make sure you wash your hands. Like, these are outside, so it may be hard to like find a sink. Make sure you keep your raw food separated from your cooked food. So like any meat products that you're cooking, keep them separated from food that's already been cooked or food that will be served raw, just like in your home kitchen. And if you're going to pre-cook some of your food, say like in the oven or the microwave, cook it immediately on your grill or barbecue. Do not wait. That's a chance for foodborne pathogens to grow. Marinate any food in the refrigerator, not on your counter, because the warmer it gets, the more desirable the environment for pathogens. And I did see Dr. Crandall on the call. If you have anything to say that I'm missing, please chime in. Cook your meats to proper temperature. So beef should be at least 160 degrees Fahrenheit and chicken at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Keep your hot food hot and your cold food cold. And I always like the saying, when in doubt, throw it out. So once you've served your food, it should not sit out more than 2 hours. So this is anything from like deviled eggs or salad to cooked foods. So your food shouldn't sit out longer than 2 hours, but if the temperature is over 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 1 hour is the maximum amount of time it should sit out. And if it's left out longer, just throw it away to be safe. And this, I think you see a lot when we talk about food safety, these 4 things to think about. Keep it clean, separate your cooked and non-cooked or your meat from your non-meat, cook to the proper temperature, and refrigerate, store properly. So that's really all I had about nutrition in summer. I wanted to keep it light and kind of fun because it's our last Defend, and I wanted to make sure we had time to talk. But I'll have Dr. Howie go into more about summer physical activities. Do you want me just to progress the slides, Erin?
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
Cool.
Take it away.
So like Jamie said, I know a lot of you on the call also have some great ideas or some solutions on ways to stay safe in the summer while doing physical activity. But just some ideas. Summer is a great time, or when the weather is nicer, we're not stuck inside and we might have a little bit more free time. to change things up and try some different activities. So we had a similar slide to this in Defend 2.0, where we looked at holiday activities that actually burn. And there's a huge long list of all different types of very specific activities. I think one of them was canoeing and collecting wild rice or something, and how many calories you spend doing these activities. So I just pulled out some examples of some, common activities that we might find ourselves doing. And these are all based on just a 150-pound person doing the activity for 30 minutes. And then we've talked a little bit about MET. Don't worry too much about what they mean. It's just how much energy you're spending. And we've talked before about moderate and vigorous physical activity. So kind of moderate to vigorous is that really heart healthy activity that we want to try and get 150 minutes of each week. And that's looking at 3 METs or higher. Once you get to 6 METs, that's vigorous physical activity. So that's usually like kind of running or walking uphill, climbing stairs, things like that. So fishing, I know we have some fishermen on the call, but if you're just in a boat or canoe, it's about 2 METs. Whereas if you're actually, fly fishing in a stream and you're waders, it's getting up to vigorous physical activity. So if you love fishing, think about how you're fishing can change how much calories you're using. Mowing the lawn, we know that, even using a power mower where you're walking, you burn a lot more calories than using a ride-on mower. Other activities that sometimes we might think of chores, but count as physical activity, weeding the garden is actually a moderate activity. So that's something you can do. And we'll talk about ways to do it safe, probably in the morning where it's a little bit cooler. Canoeing, just a moderate canoeing is getting close to vigorous activity. So that's a great option. I added paddle boating in here. My husband and I tried aqua cycling at Lake Fayetteville for the first time. It's a little bit pricey, but it was a special treat, and it was actually a pretty good physical activity, especially when you're going against the wind. You have to make sure that you get back to the dock on time. Water skiing or wakeboarding, if you're a little bit more adventurous. And then swimming, all different sorts of swimming. You can do anything from light swimming to vigorous swimming, but I just picked out 2 examples. So just a casual breaststroke is about 5 METs. So that's a moderate activity, the higher end of moderate. But the butterfly, no matter how you do it, because I think it's super difficult and I don't do it, is 13.8 METs. So a very vigorous activity if you're a butterfly swimmer. But also other options in the water, like water jogging or water aerobics can also be vigorous activity. So ways to switch it up, your physical activity in the summer. Next slide, Jeannie. And so I just wanted to raise some points. Safe. The next slides are mostly about staying safe in the heat. But this is where I'd love for anyone to share. You can think about it. We can come back to it later. Staying safe in the heat, making sure you're hydrated. Also being outside, sun protection is really important, especially if you're out in the middle of the day or even not. My husband is Australian. They're much better at UV protection. And we as Americans aren't quite so good at it. And also critters. So especially in Arkansas, I've seen some news that some more of the tick-borne illnesses are increasing in the state. So making sure that if you're going out hiking or even in water, spending time outside in the garden, that you are checking yourself and using appropriate clothing or bug spray. So starting mostly with heat and dehydration, and we'll see if you guys have any tips for the other things a little bit later. Setting reasonable goals. All the research suggests that things are harder to do in the heat. So your normal walk or your normal jog in wintertime when it's 40 degrees out is going to be a lot harder on your body physiologically when it's 90 degrees out or even 80 degrees out. So if you're used to timing yourself or walking for a certain distance, you might want to shorten that, take more breaks, for example, just kind of change your expectations for the summer. Changing your workout times. I mentioned morning is a great time to work out. It's usually the coolest time of the day. If you're used to, that 5 o'clock jog, you might need to either take it inside to a gym or again, move it to earlier in the day. Make sure you know the warning signs of heat and exhaustion and heat stroke. I have them listed in another slide a little bit later for you to reference. It's great to work out with somebody else, especially if you have any health conditions, and so that they can remind you to drink water, or if you're seeing a lot of them are kind of mental confusion signs. So if they're noticing you're not acting right, they can get you out of the heat. Don't just jump into things. We kind of had a quick switch to summer here. It was pretty cool. And then all of a sudden it was 90 degrees every day for a week. And your body does need time to acclimatize. So don't, just jump right in. Make sure you're taking those breaks and only doing a little bit at a time. The clothing that we wear really does matter. So wearing a dark, black, heavy cotton shirt while you're out in the sun is going to be more of a challenge for your body to regulate the temperature. If it is really hot, like it has been this past week in Northwest Arkansas, consider working out inside. If you like to walk, mall walking is a great option when it's really hot outside. Wearing sunscreen, but make sure you're using ones that are sweat proof. And as Jamie mentioned, dehydration is really important, and a great way is to check the color of your urine, making sure that it's not too yellow. And lastly, make sure you talk with your doctor about any medications that you're taking, because a lot of them can have effects on heat exhaustion, dehydration, and also sun exposure. So just make sure that you know what you're taking and if that increases your risk. So next slide. Like Jamie mentioned, Dr. McDermott has a great presentation on hydration, and he really is an expert on hydration and heat. I'm sure Jamie McDermott knows a little bit about it too. So if you have any personal questions, you can tune into that call this last week. But I'm just gonna give a few examples, I guess, of heat and hydration and how it can change in physical activity. So next slide. So as I mentioned, these are the kind of different heat disorders and the different signs and symptoms. So heat cramps can be the first one, where it's really localized pain. Syncope, where you have maybe fainting or you feel dizzy or nauseous. Heat exhaustion, and then heat stroke. So heat stroke is the most serious, and it's evaluated by your core temperature. So obviously we want to avoid those and just brush up on the signs and symptoms of them. Next slide. So when we're exercising, or just even when we're not, our body really tries to maintain homeostasis, and that's kind of the balance. And so we have heat gain from different sources, and we have heat loss from different sources. So during steady state conditions, so if we're not increasing or decreasing our temperature, our body is able to regulate this. And it's around 37 degrees Celsius or 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Next slide. And so when we're doing physical activity, especially if we're outside, there's lots of different sources about how we might gain heat and how we still are trying to dissipate heat from our body. But oftentimes things like thermal radiation from the sky, also conduction from and ground thermal radiation, solar radiation from the ground, if we're running on pavement, for example, things that influence our air temperature, air humidity, can kind of overwhelm our body's natural way of getting rid of it. So things like convection, how we sweat, even when we breathe, that's how we get rid of some of our heat. Our blood flow. So, when you're working out in the heat, you start to become red. That's because your body's sending all of its blood to the skin to try and get rid of some of that heat. And so our bodies are really trying to keep our temperature down and keep us in homeostasis, but it can be hard when you're having all these extra sources of heat gain. Next slide. And so this is from athletic training, but knowing when we're looking for dehydration. So dehydration and heat often go together. Our WUT are the main things, kind of symptoms that they will look at to see if you're dehydrated. So U is for urine. So that's one we've talked about, is knowing your the color of your urine, making sure it's not too yellow. T is for thirst. You've probably heard that by the time you're thirsty, it's too late. So you want to make sure that you're drinking as you go. And W is weight. And this is a great way you can figure out how much you're sweating or how much you need to drink, is that if you do exercise, so if you were to do 30 minutes on a run and weigh yourself before on a 90-degree day and weigh yourself afterwards, you would likely lose weight due to water, assuming you're not drinking or urinating as well. That's just how much you sweat. So if you're losing a lot of weight in 30 minutes, that means that you are likely losing water and more likely to become dehydrated. So if you have these kind of three things together, they can give you a sign if you are dehydrated. Next slide. And the reason we want to talk about this, especially in the heat and especially in Arkansas, is that we all see the news about heat-related deaths, and they are real. And we can prevent them by knowing signs and symptoms and just being safe when we're out in physical activity. And unfortunately, the rates are not really going down. They're kind of staying the same or going up every year. And it is tragic when it happens. Next slide. So one of the things to point out, we also think of heat-related deaths with football. And I mentioned in one of the tips to wear appropriate clothing when you're in the sun. So this is a study just looking at temperature, body temperature of football players. The orange line is when they're wearing their full uniform with pads, helmet, pants, all their gear. The green line is when they're just wearing shorts and their shoulder pads. And then the blue line on the bottom is when they're just wearing shorts, so not wearing all their pads and their gear. And so you can clearly see that that orange line, their core body temperature is a lot higher, all the way up to their peak exercise, up kind of the peak, and then it stays higher afterwards. So what you're wearing really does affect your core body temperature. Next slide. Also drinking water. So again, kind of they go hand in hand, dehydration and heat temperature. So this is just a study looking at doing physical activity. And this is a really old study from the 1940s. So we've known this information for a long time, but looking at body temperature over time. And that top line, which is that solid line, is not drinking any water. That middle line, which is kind of the dash and the dot, is drinking water ad libitum. So that's just somebody would drink when they wanted to drink. They weren't restricted in their water drinking, but they weren't forced to drink water. And then that bottom line, the dash line, is when they were actually maintaining their water balance. So they knew their sweat rate and they were compensating and drinking water to maintain that balance. And you can see that the body temperature, the core body temperature, stays a lot lower when you're maintaining your hydration levels as opposed to when you're not drinking any water. So especially when it's hot, it's even more important to drink to also help maintain your body temperature. Next slide. And these are just some tips. Definitely go back to Dr. McDermott's presentation. I'm not a hydration expert in how much you can drink, but you can actually calculate exactly how much you need based on your body weight, your sweat rate, because we all sweat at different rates, and the type of exercise that you're doing. But again, it's really important to make sure that you're drinking before, during, as well as after exercise, and drinking those water-rich foods. Next slide. And so, yeah, this is kind of our last informational session. Next week will be our final Defend 3 session, open discussion. We'll kind of have a wrap up of everything we've learned over the past 20 weeks and check in on everybody's goals as well as if you have any feedback, it's a great time to provide it, or you can email it to us as we think about the next steps for Defend. So I see we have a couple comments in the chat, but if anybody also has suggestions on staying safe in the heat, things that you found, we recently have a no-see-um issue, so we're getting some Avon Skin So Soft based on recommendations to keep those away. What are the best foods to replace electrolytes? Either of the Jamies have an answer to that one?
I think like a lot of fruits and vegetables. Jamie McDermott, I'll let you.
Yeah, so fruits and vegetables are going to be really high in potassium, which is one of the main electrolytes. But I think sometimes a lot of people forget about sodium, which you're going to mainly find in more. You're not going to find that naturally in fruits and vegetables. That's going to be more in processed foods. So you can salt your food, or you could eat foods that might contain a higher amount of sodium, and that's be in many, many things. So, but the two are both really important.
What about Jamie? Sports beverages. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So sports drinks are, I mean, it depends on the kind, but the main, Gatorade, Powerade, they are going to contain not only sodium and potassium, but they're also going to contain carbohydrate. And the type of carbohydrate in those drinks is formulated to digest well during exercise. So it's not as likely to cause muscle cramping or gastric distress. So those are marketed towards people during exercise or recovery who are needing the electrolytes plus carbohydrate. And there are also the zero versions of those, and those do not contain the sugar. They're still going to contain the sodium and potassium. So are they needed? They're typically recommended after about an hour's worth of exercise. Otherwise, it's user discretion whether you take them or not. It's not truly necessary if you've eaten and hydrated properly.
And I think also if you're trying to like manage with weight management.
Yes.
Like we bought some because I think I was texting you. We had that soccer tournament in Fort Smith, which William actually had 102.9 fever by the time we came home from that. So that was another adventure. But we bought like the big bottles of Gatorade just because we stopped at a gas station on the way because we were like, we probably need something. And like if you drank one of those bottles from the gas station, what is it, like 280 calories or something like that. So if you're interested in weight management, those sports drinks like can creep on those like calories.
They can. And another thing that we do is we buy, and you could get this at Walmart or any of the regular grocery stores, but we buy the powder mix, and that way you can customize how strong or weak you want it. And you can also add, if you want to add more salt, you can as well. There are lots of recipes out there for homemade sports drinks, which is kind of fun. But the powder's nice because you can make it stronger or, weaker. But yes, definitely for weight management, it's important to remember that typically over an hour, you're not going to be depleted of your carbohydrate stores, and therefore the ones with the carbohydrate are typically not necessary, assuming that you have eaten some carb during the day.
Thanks, Jamie. I also wanted to ask anyone, because as we have 1 week left and you've been working towards these SMART goals, are you setting new summer SMART goals or continuing with your SMART goals or setting new physical activity? I tried to actually walk the other day. It was like a really not smart choice at like 4 p.m. Man, I guess I probably needed a Gatorade after that because like 2 hours around Lake Fayetteville, like I was almost crying in self-pity, and I called my husband to come pick me up, even though I live across the street. But I think like summer's a good time. Like for my SMART goal was 3 to 5 servings of fruits and veggies every day. So seeing how hydrating they are, my goal is to like try more high water fruits. I don't know, make myself like watermelon. So, anyone else? Thoughts? It's right now it's at 12:30. But we can take a couple more questions. Any ideas for or suggestions, or anyone want tips on physical activity? We have Bryce, I saw, is on the call. You can also call on Thursday and ask him. But yeah, okay. Erin, any last thoughts? Or Jamie, Bryce?
Wear sunscreen.
Oh yeah, sunscreen, that's important.
Or
Okay.
a hat. And a hat.
Oh, thanks, Lindsay, for the feedback. We appreciate it. Oh, so when we do get our survey, Dr. Howie Hickey doesn't know this yet, but I added 2 questions this morning. Because I think there's talks about like maybe a Defend 4. We need a break for a little bit because I think this has been almost every Friday for a year. But if there were to be a Defend 4, what information would people want? Do they like the format, like the time? And also, what were the strengths and weaknesses of Defend 3 or any parts of the series, so we can improve it if we are funded to continue this in another version. But I mean, we could do something entirely new, which may also be fun and exciting. Maybe it's through like Facebook Live or in the evenings when people are home. I always thought it'd be fun to have like a live workout, but I don't know about that. Thank you, Lisa. We appreciate you. We appreciate everyone who calls in today. It really keeps us going every week. Okay. Well, thanks. Thanks to our personalized coaches and experts. We appreciate your time and we appreciate you. And we will see you for our last week. Keep an eye out for the final link to the survey. Emma will send that sometime this week. Okay. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Stay hydrated.